Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. UFC Fight Night 228 in the books. Pretty good fight night for an Apex card. Fiziev Gamrot ends with a leg injury, kind of a bummer. Bryce Mitchell uses his grappling for victory, then goes full Bryce Mitchell. Waterson-Gomez gets absolutely battered. Leben makes his Nevada debut as a judge. Are more former fighters going to turn that route? Hope so. Bellator 229, Johnny Eblen remains undefeated, then tries his luck against the older Edwards brother. And we have some blockbuster fights added for the December card, UFC from the T-Mobile Arena on December 16th. To go over all of it, literally the expert Nostradamus himself, the blue t-shirt guy, the first question guy, John Morgan. You can follow him on Twitter, John Morgan _MMA. What is up, brother?
Man, I got to be asking you what's up, right? I mean, we're going to have to change the name of this thing pretty soon to like Inside the Cage with Eric McMahon. I mean, you know, I was just in the crowd on Saturday night at the UFC Apex. I got a rare one to hang out and have a couple of frosty beverages and watch the fights. And you, my man, were the one that was working inside the UFC Apex.
Listen, it's an honor. It ain't work, man. I'm a fan first, you know, and being able to be there just in that intimate setting, it's just awesome. You know, I got to get tutelage from Dan Murgliata, Herb Dean this past weekend. Good grief, man. That ain't work.
Awesome. That's awesome, man. I'm so happy to see you, man. It was good to see you in there doing your thing, and it was fun for me. Like I said, I get a rare one every now and then where I get to just hang out, and I had my son there for the first time, a full card for the first time. I finally felt like his attention span has gotten good enough that we could take him there from the first prelim all the way to the main card, and he did it. And man, you laid it out. It was a fun night of fights, and you had a really good view of it.
I had a great view of it. So let's just dive right into it. UFC Fight Night 228 from the Apex Center. Gamrot versus Rafael Fiziev. Gamrot wins via injury TKO of round number 2 at 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Now, Gamrot kind of took credit for the injury in the post-fight press conference. Said he knew that Fiziev was going to be throwing a lot of kicks, and so kind of worked on that defense with the elbow, with the forearm. But do we know the injury as of yet?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even look, because I thought the same thing, right? It looked like it was, and that would make perfect sense. I mean, when you have down blocks like that, you're using your elbows. If you happen to shatter somebody's leg, like that is really what you did. I mean, think back to the famous Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, right? Where Weidman was like, dude, we practiced it checking the kick in exactly that fashion. So whether it be with your leg, your arms, whatever it may be, but it actually looks like it was the other one. The plant leg was the one where there was a knee injury. And maybe it happened during there was a grappling exchange where Gamrot was trying to grab the knee and grab the legs. I mean, there's a couple places where, you know, sleuths on the internet have kind of identified this looks like it might be the spot. But it was actually not even the leg that he struck with. It was actually the plant leg that they ended up being in. And it looks like potentially ligament injury there and some time away. So it was unfortunate. As you said, it was kind of an anticlimactic inning. I mean, you can't take away from the fact that it's a Mateusz Gamrot victory. I mean, it is a win. It does count for him, but it's not one of those ones that I think really catapults you ahead in the standings, right? Or like really puts you into the discussion. And that was what this whole thing was about, right? Was who was going to be, you know, ready to face those top contenders. And I'm not saying that Gamrot isn't. I mean, 23-2, that's an incredible record. I mean, this is a win, but it's just unfortunate, right? Because these aren't the ones where you go, oh, can't wait to see him face so-and-so. Can't wait to see him match up with so-and-so. You just go, eh. So it was a very, very unfortunate ending to the main event.
And it really was, because it seemed like the fight was just starting to pick up, which, you know, was pretty exciting. And if I took anything out of this, though, is Gamrot is one of the most flexible human beings I've ever seen in my life. Because, I'm sorry, Fiziev is one of the most flexible human beings I've ever seen in my life, because Gamrot was deep in on singles, would take it up, and I always called it looking at the watch, right? If you grab a single, you turn it in, you look at the watch, and you just bring their leg up eventually and run them backwards. They'll always fall over. but Fiziev was in a full split standing up, and it still wasn't taking him down. It was absolutely kind of remarkable to watch the flexibility and the stability that Fiziev had in that first and early second round.
It really was, and that's why I think a lot of people were really liking Fiziev in this matchup, because they felt, hey, the takedown defense is largely underrated. Now, would he be able to keep that up over the course of 5 rounds? I'm not sure. Would there be smart opportunities? But as you said, it did feel like it was just kind of starting to settle into a fight when the injury happened. That's what made it so important. So I'm really interested to see what the UFC does from here. I mean, the whole goal here, again, was to get somebody elevated into that, top tier of contenders. Obviously, you have Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira. They've got something coming up. Then you've got Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Beneil Dariush, Michael Chandler. I mean, those are kind of all the big names up there at the top. And somebody was going to interject themselves among those names. I don't know if that got accomplished here, unfortunately. I don't know if people are going to be clamoring. Not that you can't make one of those matchups. You absolutely can. I do think Gamrot is deserving of that, but I just don't know that fans are really going to be clamoring for it. And I think that's unfortunate, because I think he's a great talent that is largely underrated, and this felt like a potential breakout opportunity, and it just didn't happen. And then on the flip side, we're going to see how long Fiziev is out. If it is the ligament damage that it appeared to be, I mean, we might be talking about, some extensive time on the sidelines. So just unfortunate, anticlimactic all the way around.
I always love breaking down a main event and what happened here, what happened there. But we it was a kind of uneventful first round, but a lot of feeling out, a couple takedown attempts weren't able to be taken down, couple strikes here and there. But like we said, really starting to pick up when the injury happened. So we're just kind of take that one, put it to the side. Let's go to the co-main event. I think the people's main event, everybody was looking forward to this fight. I believe it delivered. And Bryce Mitchell wins a unanimous decision versus Dan Ige in a real tough fight to score. I want to ask you, how did you score that fight?
I had it 29-28, and I thought it was even going into the final round. Obviously, the final round was the easy one to score, but I had it even going into that third and final round. As you said, the 30-27 scorecard surprised me a little bit. But again, the close rounds, and it's funny with such a focus on judging and such a focus in Las Vegas and in Nevada on scoring. This was one of those ones. I think this is a good kind of study type fight, right? Because it is, it was two clashing styles, and it's what do you value? But I thought it was a very, very good fight until Bryce Mitchell took over in the third round and sealed the victory for me.
I mean, you could make an argument for that 30-27. I didn't. I had it 29-28 Bryce Mitchell, but ironically, I want to see what round you gave to Ige. I gave Ige the second round.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm with you.
Even though Bryce Mitchell controlled half that round in from a mounted position and attacking the back in that second round. So he had almost 3 minutes of control time, but we both still gave Ige just because he landed some big shots. Whereas contrary, in the first, Ige landed some strikes, was outstriking Mitchell. And Mitchell only had 1 minute of control time in that first round. But I feel, in my opinion, when he took him down, he went straight to mount, started attacking a little head and arm. Wasn't ever close, but he got that arm up on a few occasions. But the damage from Ige, even though he cut Mitchell's eye, the damage wasn't there in round number 1 to give him that round. Is that how you saw it as well?
It's exactly the way I saw it. But it's interesting because, to your point, the scorecards, even the 29-28s, were different, right? Junichiro Kamijo was the 30-27. By the way, Junichiro Kamijo, I think, is a phenomenal judge. I've seen him come up from the amateur ranks when I first moved out here to Las Vegas in 2008. He was doing tough enough, and I always seemed to side with his cards, even at the amateur ranks way back when. But you look at David Lethaby, had Bryce Mitchell's round 2 and 3, while Jacob Montalvo had Bryce Mitchell rounds 1 and 3. So the only round that everybody agreed on was round 3, of course, which was a clear one, but it just goes to show you, how competitive rounds 1 and 2 were and how close they were. But I think you laid it out exactly right, and that's exactly the way I had it scored, which is the same way that Jacob Montalvo did as well.
We'll kind of get to Chris Leben here in a little bit, because I was sitting next to him all night, and we were kind of chatting about judging and reffing and just the overall fight game. And our scorecards differed. Our unofficial scorecards from the sidelines differed there. And we were kind of talking about it. And, we'll get into that here in a second. But, Bryce Mitchell went full on Bryce Mitchell afterwards, didn't he? Now, hold on. Just so we don't start gossiping too early in this, let's get into this fight a little bit more. Bryce Mitchell even came out afterwards and he kind of said like he was surprised at the power of Dan Ige. But I mean, should he have been that surprised? It's kind of like what he's known for. He has the fastest knockout in division history.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at that as well. He said the footwork was a little better than he expected. The power was a little bit different than he expected. I was a little bit surprised at that because I thought that was exactly what you would expect from Dan Ige. I think he just probably meant that as a nod of respect that even though I expected you to have these tools, they were even better than I thought they would be. Certainly, obviously, there was mutual respect between these two guys. And, look, if you're going to start breaking down things that Bryce Mitchell says, we might be here for a long time. You know what I mean?
Did you happen to see his podcast appearance with Bisping prior to the fight?
I saw a clip from it.
I saw a clip from it too.
I did not see the whole thing. I saw a clip from it where he was quite fired up. Bryce Mitchell's an interesting man. He is an interesting man. I know you've known him for a long time. He's an interesting cat.
He seems like he's getting a lot more interesting over the years. As the years go on, Bryce Mitchell is getting more interesting. All right. But let's just get into it.
Here's the thing. He says crazy things, but they come from a very good place, it seems.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Listen,
that's why I struggle. That's why I struggle to deal with it. I mean, he says things that, conspiracy theory type stuff that I don't really know if I buy into, but then he's like, and I'm giving you $5,000 of my money to help support your cause. I mean, it very clearly comes from a good place.
He's a simple man from out on the farm. He doesn't go and cross train. He brings in now, I know his coach, Eli McLaughlin. They're just out there in Searcy, Arkansas. They're country folk, man. They are country folk. So I found this very interesting. Being in the Apex Center, it was like two halves. One half of the whole audience was for Bryce Mitchell. The other half that you were sitting on were like all for Dan Ige. Now, Let's explain the Apex Center. One half is fans that win like a Dana White experience. If you guys are watching a pay-per-view or whatever and says enter to win the Dana White experience or some contest, right? That's the fans that they let into the Apex. They don't sell tickets to this. So all that side of the risers were all mega fans that won a Dana White experience, right? The other half on the other side of the octagon where you were sitting with your son was the friends and family / fighters / your Dana's homeboy side. But most of these are fighters that are either training in Vegas, working out at the PI, and it's an awesome excuse to go to a fight, or they got a fight coming up in Vegas and they're already in fight week or fight prep mode and they're there. I mean, just the names that we saw that night.
It's the industry people right there. I mean, that side's the industry people.
Right. And so you had, Justin Gaethje was there. Kamaru Usman was there, but his brother fought earlier on the night.
Yep. Cody Garbrandt
was there.
Yep.
So there was Joanna Jędrzejczyk was there.
Yep.
There was 3 or 4 other ones that were there. Jake Shields was there.
Yep.
Right. So I say all that to say this. Now, Ige trains in Vegas, right? So that whole side in the industry people and the fighters, I'm listening to them. They're all giving the advice for Ige and they're wanting Ige to win. But the hardcore fans over to the left, they were all for Bryce Mitchell. Now, I don't know if you could hear because you were on the friends and family side and the industry people side, but that stuck out to me. There was a distinct difference there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Dan Ige is much beloved here in Las Vegas, right? Yeah. I mean, he's, as you said, a longtime trainer out here. In the early days, I think he's put it on the back burner, but he was doing some managing as well, so he could pay the bills. When he was early starting his career before he made it up to contender level. So I mean, he was just really involved out here in Las Vegas, and so the man is much loved. He's just such a good dude. Mm-hmm. But you're right, as far as who's resonating with the fan base that was in there with the fight fans, they were all cheering for Bryce Mitchell over there. You could definitely hear it. It was unique to see the Apex split like that.
Now, if he had beef with Bryce Mitchell, if he had beef with Bisping coming into the fight, he's got beef with Bisping heading out of the fight. Now, I'm going to paraphrase here because, I'm going to stay center lined here, right? I think we both have to. Bryce Mitchell gets in there. He claims the Maui wildfires were not natural. They were man-made. That's a lot of there's some big theories out there about that. So I'm not going to discredit Bryce Mitchell. There are numerous theories out there about that, especially in the response to the tragedies and whatnot, right? I think we can all assume that there were some mistakes made along the way, right? Which just added fuel to some of these fires. No pun intended there, right? And so he gets on there and he says, Satan's taken over the world. Maui was man-made and I'm donating $5,000. So you're like, good guy. While he's holding a Bible, not to mention he held it first time a Bible's ever entered the octagon pre-fight. I didn't even notice it in real time. Did you?
Yeah, it was wild. I didn't realize what it was, but it became quickly apparent how he brought it in and held it up over his head. Wild.
I was sitting on the cage. I didn't even notice it. Now, I was probably immersed in the conversation with Chris Leben because when Chris Leben's sitting next to you, talk to Chris Leben, right? So post-fight says all that I just said and then says, I'm going to give $5,000 to Dan Ige to do with it to help the people of Maui. Then wants Ige. He puts Ige on the spot and says, I'm going to pray for in front of everybody. I want Ige to do this. And then Michael Bisping takes the mic away. Bryce Mitchell then insists on getting it, right? And then Bisping takes it away again. And you have poor Dan Ige here who just looks like a deer in the headlights. He just lost this back and forth battle. We're talking about the crazy stuff going on. Let's not discredit both of these men put on a war and put their heart and soul into this fight. But I just felt for Ige in that situation. He's sitting there deer in the headlights, he's trying to help my people, but he's also putting me on the spot here. What do I do?
It's such a weird situation. Anytime the winner brings in the loser of the fight, I mean, it's cool, right? Because it's done, again, out of respect. It's like, hey, I want this man to have the spotlight as well. I don't want it to minimize who this man is. But you're right. That man is sitting there trying to process the defeat they just had. They're down in the dumps. I mean, this sport is cruel, man. It's the highest of highs. It's the lowest of lows. So you bring him in there, like you said, you say, Dan, I want you to lead us in prayer for your people back home in Hawaii. And Michael Bisping's like, I don't know what to do here. I don't think we've ever discussed this in a production meeting before, but I'm pretty sure I'm not.
And he goes, let's get back to the fight. And Mitchell's like, nope.
Oh man, and that's why I say Bryce is just out there, man. He's out. We've never seen that before. He's just out there, but it all comes from a good place. You know what I mean? Again, it's one thing for a man to say I believe this conspiracy is happening and et cetera, but then to say, and oh, by the way, I'm committing my own financial resources to help address it. So it's on the one hand, you're like, bro, what are you talking about? But then it's well, but you're doing something nice about it. So how can I be mad at that? So I mean, unique character. The man has the camo shorts. I mean, he's the only one in the UFC that was given his own brand of shorts. I mean, he's just a unique character, but I remain a fan. I've been a fan for that Thug Nasty, man. I remember him coming up in World Series of Fighting, and just that interview that he gave was hilarious. When Joey Varner asked him, he's like, "Why do they call you Thug Nasty?" And in that thick accent that he has, he's like, "Y'all see me in the cage, but you ain't see me in the streets." And right then, I'm like, I'm a fan. This dude is crazy, and he's out there. But again, it all comes from a good place, man. And it looks like he's not slowing down anytime soon. You probably didn't get to see the preview show on Friday night because I know you were just kind of getting into town and getting settled in. But he was talking to John Gooden, and he was saying he thinks people really like him and relate to him because he speaks out against the government, and he says what people want to say but are afraid to say, and he's going to continue to do that throughout his career. So don't expect him to slow down anytime soon.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with it. No, I didn't see that, but I've seen enough Bryce Mitchell because when Bryce Mitchell does a podcast or an interview, which he doesn't do many,
right? You
tune in because something's popping. He's doing it for a reason. He's got something on his mind that he wants to say. Now, I say all that to say this. I mean, his walkout was the new music sensation, Oliver Anthony, about the disenfranchised man. Listen, Bryce Mitchell, whether you believe it or not, he believes it. He believes he is sticking up for the disenfranchised man or person, shall I say. He believes that. So whether you like his stance or you don't, that's not for me to decide. The guy is passionate, and I don't understand a way that you cannot like what Bryce Mitchell says. You cannot like how Bryce Mitchell is emphatic about it and out there about it. But he has yet to do anything, in my opinion, that is kind of unlikable.
That's a great way to put it. It's really a great way to put it. You could listen to some of the things he says, and you can disagree with them, right? And you can say that I don't think you're right in this. But again, I think you have to understand that it really does come from a great. I can tell you this: at the media day this past week, after his media session was over, he came back in the room just to shake everybody's hand and to thank all of us as media members for the job we do. He's like, I really appreciate the effort that you put in. You guys help give us a platform. You help give fans an opportunity to hear what we have to say and to see what we do. And I just want to thank you for that. I mean, who does that? You know what I mean? A handful of people ever in the history of my being in that media room have ever done that. And Bryce Mitchell was that guy. So there's some things that he says that I just listen to him and I'm like, I don't agree with this at all, Bryce Mitchell. I have an entirely different opinion, but I can't ever hate the guy for the way he says it and what he's trying to do. It just always seems like, again, as you said, he's just trying to stick up for the common man. He's trying to, right where he sees wrong, and it always comes from a good place. So I have a hard time not liking the guy.
This speaks to a bigger point than Bryce Mitchell, and one that I absolutely love. This speaks to the platform and the ability to be oneself that the UFC and no other organization in this world will allow their quote unquote employees to be. And you know what? That is the direct result of one person. And that one person is Dana White. Love him or hate him, he will take the criticism and he will do everything. But that's the bigger point to all of this. Just like there are so many things that fighters say where I'm like whatever. He lets it all go. And he's never going to censor any. In a world of cancel culture, it is refreshing to see an organization, a public company, a $13 billion valuation company allow their employees, their 1099s, everybody to say what they feel.
Yeah, and he'll stand by that forever, because there's been a lot of times over the years where somebody has said something and I'll ask Dana White about it. I'm like, man, that was a little bit on the edge, do you step in here? Is this one where you pull him behind the scenes and you say, hey, bro, can you back off that a little bit? We need to shy away from that. And without fail, every single time, Dana White says, no. I mean, that's what we do here. Guys can say whatever they want. People can do whatever they want. That's the way this is. So, no, absolutely won't stand in the way of anybody doing it. So, again, you could disagree. And I know a lot of people disagree with Bryce Mitchell. I happen to be one of them in a lot of situations. But I can't hate the guy for being who he is and for doing it for what he believes is the right reasons, not to hurt other people, not to put down other people, not to do anything against other people, but to do what he believes is right.
Yeah, and he doesn't maliciously attack anybody. He attacks a whole.
Right.
And truth be told, like, I agree with Bryce Mitchell a lot of the time, but I agree with him at a level 2 or 3. Right? Not at a level 10. So I'm in your boat. Like, I disagree with the manner in which he will go about it and the vigor in which he does. And so, but that's the great thing about the UFC, man. It's just, I can't state that enough. That is so refreshing in a PC era, cancel culture era, that Dana allows these people to be who they are.
True. Fair point, man. He'll never stand it, no matter, and he never has, and as far as I can tell, never will, because it just doesn't seem like he leans into that whatsoever.
All right, we got to go to probably the hardest fight that we've had to watch in a while, and that was Michelle Waterson-Gomez getting brutalized.
Yeah,
brutalized in this fight. Now, something as a dad, something like really struck me, and I told my wife about it, and she actually had this like visceral, angry reaction because I had her watch the fight. Michelle Gomez, or I keep on saying Waterson-Gomez, right? Her daughter was in attendance, and her daughter was sitting not 5 feet from me, and the agony that her daughter was going through watching her mother get brutalized. It was hard to watch for me sitting there. I'll be perfectly honest. It was very hard for me to watch the agony her daughter was going through.
Yeah, so I didn't know about that until afterwards. I was watching the fight, and I didn't know until afterwards that her daughter. So I did not see that. And I saw it was Alex Buchanan, the MMA journalist. He tweeted about it and said that the daughter was crying, and I can totally understand.
I was watching it in real time, 5 feet from me. I couldn't even watch the fight at one point.
That's painful, man. It's so hard because I'm so torn on that, right? Because, you know, and I think we all are. I think anybody involved in this industry is a little bit torn on it. Like, at what point do you expose your child to mixed martial arts, right? I mean, it is brutal at its core. I mean, it is hand-to-hand combat inside of a steel cage. So at what point do you expose them to it? But, you know, there's something to be said for, I mean, first of all, what do? Do you hide what you do for a living from your child? I mean, that's weird. Like, hey, you know, mommy's going to work right now. Don't ask what it's about. You don't need to know about that. No. And, you know, you don't have these opportunities to fight forever, and you don't take these moments for granted. So you want them to share in that experience, right? I mean, that's the great thing about being a parent, right? As soon as you become a parent, and I know every parent understands this, as soon as you become a parent, it's no longer about what you get to do that's cool. It's about what you get to do that you get to share with your child that's cool, right? You know what I mean? You want to share every experience with them. You want to let them have every experience that they can. And I'm sure that's what Michelle Waterson-Gomez is thinking here. And the other thing about it that struck me, because you're so right, man, it was such a vicious fight, bloody fight. She got brutalized 10-8 in round 1, finished in round 2. Probably could have been called off in round 1, but you know, Carrie Hatley let the fight continue on, and
we'll get there. We'll get there. I want to get your opinion.
Yeah, and so we let the fight go on. But the cool thing was, and it stuck out to me because, you know, I watched it live, but then I went back and watched the broadcast as well. But you know, there was a timeout late in round 1, and when they decide, hey, you can continue on, Michelle's smiling. Round 2. Blood is streaming down her nose as she comes out. They couldn't even stop the blood between rounds. It's streaming out of her nose as she comes out in round 2. And she's smiling. She loves it. She can't wait to be in there. She's doing what she loves, what she's passionate about, even though it's definitely not going her way. And even though, obviously, it was incredibly stressful for her child. I mean, nobody wants to see their parent getting beat up, bottom line. Nobody wants to see that. So I struggle with it because I see both sides of it. You know, I hear people say, why would you ever have your child in there when you're fighting? And I get that. But I also understand why you want your child to be there. And I also understand why your child should look up to that. I mean, look at, yes, it didn't go your mom's way, but look at what she's willing to get in there to do. And if she's willing to take this risk, to take this sacrifice, to put this kind of effort in, to never stop, you know, how can you ever quit something in your life knowing what your mom did? You better not quit. You saw your mom. She didn't quit. You better not ever quit. So there's lessons on both sides of it for sure.
My heart was literally breaking watching this little girl. She was sitting, I believe, with like grandma at the time, next to grandma in her own seat, and she was just getting hysterical over this. And so then I think, I don't know, sister, aunt, somebody then had to pick her up, put her in her lap, and kind of just embrace her while it was happening. I told my wife about it. I said, let's watch this fight. Like, and I kind of told her what happened, and she just goes, she was my wife. You know, a mother, she was a little emotional about it, not crying or anything, but she actually had a visceral reaction. Like, why was she there? Why was she there? And she brought up a decent point, which I don't think we talk about, but she's like, there could be trauma there. Like, you know, and we hear trauma about people seeing their mother getting beat up or whatever in domestic situations. But the trauma that little girl, like watching, I mean, I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but it was just something my wife brought up. And I was just like, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. I thought about it in the moment, how bad it would be. But then once mommy said, hey, I'm okay, then everything would go back to normal. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's fair. It's a fair point. I mean, look, this is a brutal sport. It's wild, right? Because we all love it. It's our favorite sport. I mean, anybody that's involved in this, they absolutely love it, right? But you have these reminders every now and then, you know, what this is. As much as it is a sport, again, it is hand-to-hand combat. You know what I mean? And there is the possibility of really bad things happening in there. And so you have to have that reminder. And I think it's one reason that I get so frustrated when I hear like fans or whatever that aren't respectful of these athletes that get in there. I mean, you really do need to understand what they're going through to get in there.
Just to take the walk.
Oh my gosh. I mean, obviously the physical preparation, but the mental stress. I mean, the psychology behind, I mean, it's insane. And what they do is next level, and they deserve a certain amount of respect, as you said, just for walking in there, just for getting in there, just for being willing to do it. So it's a hard one. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer with this. Should children be in there? I don't know. Again, I see value in it. I see value in, again, that shared experience. I see value in, the child seeing what the parent is willing to do and the type of character that they have and what it means, at your core to be a warrior. But I mean, people ask me all the time, hey, do you want your son to grow up and be a fighter? And I'm like, hell no, I don't want my kid to be a fighter. Like, there's no way I could ever watch him. So, I think it goes the same for parents and children as children and parents. It's so hard to watch someone you love get in there and there's nothing you can do for them. There's absolutely nothing you can do for them. You're helpless on the outside as they go through this. But I see value in it too. I see value in it as well.
I do too. Now let's this has to be said. Michelle Waterson-Gomez's fight was the extreme. It was the extreme end of that spectrum. In reality, the mom or dad will lose, right? They'll be okay. And it's a lesson in either picking yourself back up or look at what all this hard work got me in the win, or you have to pick yourself up and you have to accept losing at times. This is just the extreme. So I don't have a problem with kids being there. We have to understand this one is that outlier.
You're right. That's a great point. And it's hard. I'm actually happy I didn't see it on Fight Night because I would have been heartbroken as well. It's tough, man. This is a brutal sport.
Yeah, it was one that left an impression on me for sure. Now I do want to get to the stoppage in that fight because there could be a case that that fight could have and should have been stopped in round number 1. Now, this is a pro fight in the UFC. For anybody, in my opinion, to really say Kerry Hatley should have stopped that fight, I think you're looking at it more from a humanitarian standpoint. And like, we just have this admiration for Waterson-Gomez here because every time they got in these positions and there was a break in the action, Michelle Gomez would come right back and want more, right? So, but here's where I think corners need to take the opportunities when they get it. Okay, I talked to Kerry Hatley. He said during the stoppage in time for the cuts that there wasn't much time left in that round. It was as much of an opportunity for them to look at the cut as it was for their corner for her corner to intervene. He looked at them and they were like, so listen, in my opinion, there was zero reason Kerry Hatley should have been given any crap for stopping this fight. And if there is going to be an area, you need to look to the corner. It is their job in that moment, when they know that a path to victory is not there, that no extra punishment needs to be taken just for the simple fact of going out on your shield.
Yeah, it's interesting because could Kerry Hatley have stopped it? I think he could have, but I think you said it right. Should he have? No, not really, because Michelle Waterson responded every time that, Kerry was right on top of it. Every time he was like, I need to see something, she showed something. You know what I mean? She would get out of these bad situations. She responded. Like I said, as much of a one-sided fight, and it didn't start that way, by the way. It started out pretty good for Michelle Waterson. Got the early takedown. It was clear that, she wanted to use a grappling-based game plan, which was smart. And then, obviously the Muay Thai machine that is Marina Rodriguez started to take over on the feet.
That form was ridiculous.
Oh, she's so big. She's such a great athlete. And then when she talked about afterwards, she's like, I need to get back to that violent nature. I'm like, well, you did so there.
Yeah.
But to your point, and I think it is a big point, and it's just one we discuss every now and then, but it's one that needs to be more active corner rolls. And, in boxing, a corner stopping a fight is not uncommon in the least, man. You see the towel come in all the time where the corner just says, listen, and sometimes the fighter hates it. Sometimes the fighter says, what are you doing? I was in this, but you have to trust the trainer to go, no, I just didn't see a path to victory. Let's save it and let's fight another day. You don't see it as much in mixed martial arts. And there's multiple reasons for that. One, I think, is of course the pay system in which you get money for a win bonus. So you don't want to take that opportunity away. And there's so many ways to win. In boxing, if your punches aren't landing and the other person's punches are landing frequently, that's probably not going to change. But, in mixed martial arts, you're like, well, you got the kicks, you got the knees, you got the elbows, you got the takedown, you can get it to the ground. And so I get it. There's multiple paths to victory outside of just one. But I just do think it needs to be more normalized, because it's not normalized right now in mixed martial arts for corners to stop fights. And I think it should be, and it shouldn't be viewed as cowardly. It shouldn't be viewed as bad or anything. It's just like, look, we didn't have it today, and we're going to limit the amount of damage we take today so that we can do it again somewhere in the future.
Do you think I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think her corner should have stopped the fight?
No. No. I mean, again, I'll say it the same way that Carrie Ellie could have, and I would have seen no shame in it whatsoever, because it was not looking good. There was, a lot of blood, a lot of damage being taken. But again, she's smiling, she's responding, she's trying to fight, and I hate to take that away from her. So as much as I'm sitting here saying it should be normalized, it's probably not even normalized to me yet. I probably would have let her keep going.
I think to accurately answer that question, we need to know what the future holds. She's coming down to on the twilight of her career. How many more does she got left in her? That could have played a factor. Like if she, listen, was anybody, and I don't know if I was sitting this from afar and I was reading too much into it. Like, this almost looked like, if I can't get over this hump and avenge this, then this sport might not be for me anymore now as a mother and a wife. And so there was half of me was almost expecting, just even going into it, expecting those gloves to come off. And so I don't know. I say all that to say this. I think if we know where somebody's going from where they've been is going to impact our decision in the moment of whether stopping that fight or not. So who knows? It remains to be seen what the future holds for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, but that probably would have determined whether I was going to throw in the towel. Like, if I knew that this was my fighter's last fight or second to last fight, I'm not throwing in the towel. If I knew that, hey, man, she wants to go back to the drawing board, we got to fix some things, I'm not letting her take that damage. I'm just not. Yeah. I would have thrown in the towel.
That's a good point. That's a great point. And you're right. I mean, I think, we talked to Michelle Waterson immediately ahead of time, and she admitted, and I asked her, I'm like, because, she's had some frustrating setbacks. And, I asked her, I'm like, look, you're a mom, you've got a lot of notoriety outside of the cage as well. She's always been a very popular figure outside of the cage as well. You have other options on the table. And she was like, yeah, I definitely have thought about that. I've thought about what comes next and where we go from here. But she loves it. You know how it is, man. She loves it. Like I said, she's a warrior. She was taking damage and still smiling and ready to go.
She didn't go down. She did not quit.
Nope, she didn't, man. She just won't. She's one of those ones. And I was actually messaging with a buddy of mine this morning, Abby Subban, who was saying, and it's so right. Boy, if there was an atom weight division, man, she'd be smart. If there was a 105,
she fought at that in Invicta.
She did. Exactly right. And listen, there's been talks. I'd love to see 105 at some point in the UFC. There are a lot of women at 115 that would be probably even more suited for 105 because they're just small even for 115. I don't know if the UFC will ever budge on that. It's been brought up, time here and there, and I know they've considered it, but it obviously might be a little late for Michelle Waterson-Gomez, but she's one that I think would thrive at 105. So.
All righty. Last thing I wanted to touch base on from UFC Fight Night 228 from the Apex was the Nevada State Athletic Commission debut of the crippler, Chris Leben.
Love it.
Good to see him, right?
I love it, man. I'd run into Chris Leben a few times doing his thing out in California at some Bellator shows and that sort of thing, but I was glad to see him in Las Vegas. Chris Leben is a legend, man. That dude, I mean, the cat smasher. I mean, the ultimate fighter. I mean, this dude is an absolute legend. And to see him continuing to do big things in the industry well past his fighting days, I love to see it. I love to see that he's still so involved and revered and respected, and love to see him out there doing his thing. So I was happy to see him in Las Vegas.
I got to ask you, by having him out there, is this a direct result of the 10-8 round? Mike Bell. And I say all this, I say that because I have a little inside knowledge that I know. Here's what I'll say. I know that Chris Leben didn't have this assignment weeks ago.
Interesting. So this was a late adjustment. Interesting to know that. Yeah, I mean, look, I wouldn't be surprised at that. I mean, certainly, the continued fallout from the 10-8 round at Noche UFC continues to have these ripple effects, right? There was a training seminar this past week that I was involved in as well, where it was real. And I loved it. I thought it was great. Great educational process to go back and watch every single round from the night of Noche UFC that was scored a 10-8 by any judge and determine whether or not it should be a 10-8 or it should be a 10-9. And so, a group of us all reviewed it, and then we all talked about it and discussed it afterwards. And Jeff Mullen and Mark Smith were leading the call, and they were kind of, this is why it should be a 10-8. This is why it shouldn't be a 10-8. It was all good to see. So, yeah, I imagine this is very much a direct result of what happened there. And look, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with bringing in people and admitting mistakes and making changes. I've always said one thing I'd really like to see at some point is some kind of structured evaluation system for like referees and judges, where it's almost like a scoring type system of how they're doing against the expected result, so that when you do have these assignments, when there's a title fight and you say, why were these three the judges that you assigned to this title fight? And you say, well, it's really easy. You see this list right here of who's been scoring the best this year against expected results. These are the top three. That's why we're going with these three. They've nailed it, 98% of the time, or whatever the case may be. I'd love to see that. I know that would take a lot of work and a lot of development to get there, but I hope we can get there at some point because, listen, it's a hard job, as we all know. Getting in that chair is difficult, man. It's not easy to do. It's a lot easier to score a fight with a frosty beverage in your hand and sitting on your couch at home than it is to get in there and you feel that pressure. But it's a responsibility that matters. I mean, you're talking about not only win bonuses, but you're talking about trajectories of careers and all of that. I mean, it's a big thing, and it has to be taken seriously. So if you're going to bring in some fresh blood and kind of shake things up a little bit, nothing wrong with that.
And so, here's the thing. Everybody says that ex-fighters should be judges. A lot, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't disagree with it. If you're going to have somebody who's come up through the process like Chris Leben, what a lot of people don't know is he's been reffing and judging for a while now, since he started his career in California. Right. And so now we get the call up into Vegas, which is the hardest commission to get into. So now that he got the call up, hey, good. He has paid his dues in that world. If you think you're just going to get a fighter to come in and say they know the sport better because they fought, I'm going to call BS on that, right? Because you do have to know the criteria, exactly what you're looking for. Now, can they adapt to it quicker? Probably. But just because they're a fighter doesn't make them a judge, doesn't make them a ref.
No, you'd be surprised actually how many times you talk to fighters and they don't actually know the scoring criteria, which is a little bit interesting. You'll hear them say like, "Well, shouldn't I be awarded for my defense here? Shouldn't I be awarded for?"
Nope.
And like, no, it actually says that nowhere in the scoring criteria whatsoever.
It actually says defense should not be rewarded.
That's right. This is an offensive. It's an offensive-based sport. So, you'd be surprised. Now, the knowledge is there for sure. I mean, they certainly are going to understand the positions. They're going to understand what they're seeing a lot more than somebody off the streets. That's for sure. So, as to your point, is spot on that they could probably adapt quicker if they learn. The problem I think with having ex-fighters is you just have to be very, very careful of the relationships that they have, because I mean, this is a small community. You know what I mean? And so you're going to have trained with certain people or fought with certain people or whatever the case may be. There's going to be existing relationships. So the propensity for biases in these fights are a lot higher. Obviously, working with you, I've seen you recuse yourself from certain fights, right? Because like, hey, I've trained with that guy before. Or that guy's in a gym that I've been. So I obviously can't take part in this. I'm going to give this to my fellow official who's working with me tonight. And that's great. And you have to do that. And you just have to be careful if you have ex-fighters in this position that doesn't happen a lot more often. So you have to be very, very aware of that. But the knowledge is there. And again, I love to see people that are so passionate about the sport remain involved in the sport. You know what I mean? Because I think that's how the sport continues to get better, is people that actually love it and care about it and want to see the best for it continue to help usher it forward.
Now, Chris Leben only had 2 fights on the night. He had like one in the first fight and the third or fourth fight, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a busy night for Chris Leben. He had 2 of the 13.
And I did want to point out, because you're right, one of the first card of the night was a split decision.
This is where I'm bringing this up.
I scored it the exact same way he did.
And so did I. So Chris Leben was the outlier. He was the odd man out on a split decision. he voted. He said the loser won. He gave it 2 rounds to 1. I forgot the professional name.
Tamiris Vidal was the woman's name against Montserrat Rendon, and he gave Tamiris Vidal rounds 1 and 2. Whereas Junichiro Kamijo and Jacob Montalvo both gave Rendon rounds 2 and 3. And I scored it exactly the way Chris Leben did. I had Vidal taking 1 and 2.
And because I talked to him about that fight in particular, I said, okay, hey, I said, just to let you know, man, I agreed with you. And we had to talk like kind of quiet, right? Because we're in the bullpen and all the other judges and refs are there. And I said, but this comes to perspective, and this is going to rear its head in the Bryce Mitchell fight too. And and listen, I'm partial to grappling. I'm a grappler. Chris Leben is a knockout artist, a standing fighter. Okay. If we look at them through different prisms, and judges are a lot like this too, and everybody. So she was landing nasty leg kicks and then got taken down, and not much happened, but the judges went with the person who got the takedown and had the duration. Whereas Chris Leben went with impact more of the time, which I agreed with him in that fight.
Yep.
Now let's get to the Bryce Mitchell fight, because me and him were both watching the Bryce Mitchell fight. He gave round 1 and 2 to Ige. Now this is unofficial. We're BSing and BSing and watching. But he said because of damage. He gave 1 and 2.
It's interesting, and he's not on an island there, because David Letheby gave Ige round 1, and Jacob Montalvo gave Ige round 2. So I mean, it's not judges agreed with him in that. So, but you're right. But I think in that first fight, you know, what I saw there was exactly what you said: the damage of the leg kicks versus once you had the takedown, there wasn't a lot with the takedown. It's one, you know. And we've talked about it lately, right? The scoring criteria, a takedown is essentially supposed to be just a change of position, right? Now, if you get a high impact takedown, you know, a big slam that continues down, okay, that should score some points.
Now, in fairness, she did hit her with a few big elbows.
A few big elbows, but I didn't think I just didn't think a ton of damage. I didn't think it was as much. I mean, and it's funny because I'm a big fan of grappling as well, and I love it when I see somebody, you know, just string together submissions and you're forcing somebody defense and you get ground. I mean, I love that, but I just didn't feel like there was enough to sway what I'd seen on the feet already. So it was kind of wild. Like Chris Leben was the lone man out on that first one. But I agreed with them, and the Ige, look, man, that fight was close until the third round. It was close. So
I think with the Mitchell, and this is kind of like me and Leben were talking about this, and I said what made that first round and the third round is not just that Bryce Mitchell got the takedown and had duration. It's how he was attacking the back, that he was so exponentially better in that position. Now, Ige was better in the striking, no doubt about it. But was he that exponentially better? Right? The differences in the worlds weren't as big in the striking as they were in the grappling, which I think when you see Bryce Mitchell taking a back from like an absurd angle that just defies logic, like that's when you're talking about stringing things together.
Yep. Absolute sorcery right there in that transition that he had. It was incredible, man. He is a phenomenal grappler, man. He is so good.
And both, like every takedown was like straight to mount. Crazy.
Yep. Unbelievable.
So anyways, moving on. Congratulations, Chris Leben, on getting that license in Nevada. Very, very hard to do. I can attest to that, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now let's move to Bellator 299 from overseas. Johnny Eblen overcame adversity early. Got split open bad by Fabian Edwards. Turned the tide, third round, huge right hand. Led to vicious ground and pound for a TKO victory. But that's fun. Do you got anything on the fight?
You were to talk about the fight after the fight?
That's where I was going.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great performance, Johnny Eblen. You said it right. He got tested early. But that dude is good. That dude is good. And whatever continues to happen with Bellator /PFL /whatever, that dude will definitely be a factor in those moves. That guy is really good.
Okay, gonna have to kind of speed through it here. After the victory, after the TKO finish, he then stood over Fabian Edwards. And that didn't please the reigning UFC champion and big brother, Leon Edwards. They started beefing. Was fun to watch. Riveting television. They squashed it. But I was like, hell yeah, I'm here for it. The UFC welterweight champion in the cage, them being separated, you know, I'm here for it.
It was a good scene. It was a good scene. Like you said, it's not, they squashed it. It's not going to lead to a fight. They're in different organizations. But, Leon sticking up for his brother, didn't like perhaps a little disrespect there from Eblen. You have to. And it made for a cool scene. That's for sure.
Now, I want to talk about a quote afterwards. In his media afterwards, he goes, they squashed it. He went up to Leon Edwards in the back, apologized. And this is what he said to a media quote, "A lot of emotions, bro," said during post-fight media sessions. I mean, his brother is a great fighter, and I honestly hope he beats Colby. I effing hate Colby. That dude sucks. But yeah, I want to fight him, meaning Leon Edwards. He's one of the best guys in the world, and I want to prove that I'm one of the best in the world. You got to fight everybody. He's not in my weight class, but I feel he might go up to 85 eventually. But I went over after the fight and told him, hey, man, I'm sorry. My emotions were high, and I squashed the beef. I don't have anything wrong with him. I just want to fight him.
I love it. That's the mindset.
That's a fighter's fighter.
That's a fighter's fighter, man. And that's why he's so respected, man. This dude is undefeated. Everybody at American Top Team loves the guy. I mean, has nothing but great things to say about him, and will just tell you how great he is in the gym. He shows it in the cage as well. And, I don't know if those paths will ever cross with Leon Edwards. Like he says, it's not even a fight that's in his weight class, but Leon is a big guy for welterweight. So if he chooses to move to middleweight, who knows, man? Maybe they'll meet down the line, a little bit of history. But I love that, right? Don't hate the guy. I just want to fight him. That's what I do.
I want to fight him. It's all good. All right. What, we 3 weeks away? We 3 weeks away from Mahashev Oliveira?
Get around that.
All right.
I don't even know. Are we?
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 3, 3, 3.5.
3.5. All right. We're going to put that to the side because some huge blockbuster fights have been added to UFC 296 December 16th at the T-Mobile Arena. Now, we already got our headliner, Colby, Leon, the aforementioned Leon. I just want to go down. Here's the co-main as it stands now, right? The co-main, Pantoja versus Brandon Royval.
Love that.
Love it. After that, Rachmanov, Stephen Thompson. Man, the UFC, they might not be too happy with Stephen Thompson right now. But this is a good fight for him, I believe.
Stylistically, it should be, man. This is a great matchup. I like this fight a lot too.
Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett. I don't know what to make of this fight. I think this is going to see where on the pecking scale Pimblett really is, because obviously, everybody says he didn't win his last fight, but he's coming off an injury, surgery, rehab, coming off of Tony Ferguson, in my opinion, who looked actually pretty good in defeat in his loss. This one, a lot of people are saying, Tony Ferguson get thrown to the wolves. I don't think so. I think this is an even fight. Pimblett is a jiu-jitsu master. Tony Ferguson, unorthodox, but a jiu-jitsu master.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I saw a lot of backlash at this matchup and people going, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous matchmaking by the UFC. And I thought, actually, it's pretty good matchmaking by the UFC if you think about it. I mean,
I agree.
Paddy Pimblett, of course, star power. He's got all this, attention around him. He commands an audience, but he doesn't really have a signature win yet, and understandably so, right? And he's easing his way up the ranks. You don't just automatically come in and fight top 10 guys. You got to make your way up the ranks, and that's what he's doing. This would be a signature win. I mean, Tony Ferguson, former interim champ, one of the biggest stars in the company. I mean, people know this, man. This would be a signature win. Meanwhile, for Tony Ferguson, as you said, he's been competitive even in defeat. But if you think about, he's taken some kind of difficult knockout losses. So I think, irresponsible matchmaking would maybe be to put him in there with somebody that is a hugely dangerous striker. Instead, you got somebody that probably wants to grapple with you.
With that explosive power, right?
That's it, right? And he wants to grapple. Tony Ferguson's a phenomenal grappler as well. So I actually like this match. I saw a lot of people pushing back against it. I actually like it. And for Tony Ferguson, again, it's an opportunity to show where he still stands. I know he still wants to keep doing this, man. He wants to keep competing, and this is an opportunity for him to show that he still belongs against these young guns. So I think I differ from the majority. I saw a lot of negative feedback against this. I actually like this fight.
I agree with you. I love the matchup just stylistically. Let's see, because we all know Paddy Pimblett's got great jiu-jitsu. Great jiu-jitsu.
Phenomenal.
But the unorthodox jiu-jitsu of Tony Ferguson is so fun to watch. So
Oh, yeah,
I think we have traditional
gonna
jiu-jitsu and unorthodox jiu-jitsu.
yeah, Tony's gonna throw an Imanari roll out there. You know what I mean? He's gonna get wild. He's gonna get crazy, and I think it should be fun. So I like this fight, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Now, one that hasn't really been talked about, I don't know when it got added. I just kind of pulled up the card and I saw it, but now this is the one I think I may be most excited for. Ian Gary, Vicente Luque.
That's a great fight.
That is a great fight.
Vicente Luque, you know, continually kind of flies under the radar, but is just phenomenal every time he gets out there. Ian Gary, you know, again, a guy that is got a lot of hype around him that seems to be the next generation, that seems to be the next level contender. Here's an opportunity to prove, like, you belong. You know, you absolutely belong here.
He wants to step up in talent. He's getting it.
Getting it right here. Phenomenal matchup as well. Love that. Love that.
Yeah. So we got a couple good pay-per-views coming up. A lot of fight card, a lot of fight nights mixed in between. Coming to the tail end of Dana White Contender Series. Everybody, if you're not, tune in Tuesday. That's one day from today. We record on a Monday. If you find this on a Wednesday, Thursday, disregard this little segment right here. But I'm telling you, the potential fight of the year Dana White Contender Series, 2 local products that I'm intimately familiar with. Both. I've reffed them both. I've cross-trained with one. But I'm telling you, these guys have ran shop over this region, and somehow they are fighting each other in Dana White Contender Series. Raheam Rambo Forrest versus Danny Left Hand of God Barlow. This fight is going to be, in my opinion, the highest level fight on the Contender Series this year, at least.
It's so crazy, man. You know, there's not a big UFC event this weekend, but there's a lot of MMA on tap, and this Dana White's Contender Series event is one of them. And this fight, I can't tell you, Eric, behind the scenes, how much hand-wringing there has been with the CFFC crew, because we all want to see guys that come through our organization. We all want to see them, you know, make it to the next level and get these accomplishments, and we cheer for them. You know what I mean? We cheer for them. They're part of the CFFC family, and to see them get matched up against each other, while on the one hand, you're like, oh, that's going to be a hell of a fight. 2 Memphis area guys that everybody has been
you say within the CFFC family. What do you think it's like within here, the Memphis boundaries?
I know, bro. It's a Memphis family. They're right. Everybody's been trying to get these 2 guys to fight from the time they stepped on the scene, and they've avoided each other. And, you know, I wish they could have avoided it a little bit further until they both were in the UFC, and this fight could happen in the UFC. Instead, it's happening for the right to get into the UFC. And I keep saying, I guess if there's a silver lining, it means that one of them is probably going to get a contract, but dang it, I just wish both of them would. I'm excited for the fight because you said these are 2, I mean, just incredible mixed martial artists. It's going to be a great fight. I'm just bummed that it means that one of them likely will have a few more steps before they make the UFC, because I believe they'll both be in the UFC. Yeah, but I think one of them's going to have to take a few more steps before he gets there.
Now, I know both camps. I know both coaches. I know both guys. I'm entrenched in the scene. And it's been rumored for years. Every local promotion around here, and CFFC for that matter, has been trying to book this fight to a degree. And the notion is that, you know, these guys, when they fight, it deserves to be in a prominent pay-per-view role, kind of like in the UFC. And so both camps have know the trajectory these guys are on and say, let's save this fight. Nobody's ducking anybody here regionally. Nobody was ducking anybody, but this fight is too big here regionally. We got to get it on the big platform, both camps. And they kind of got it.
I mean, it is on ESPN Plus. It will be at the UFC Apex. It is the featured bout of the night, so they'll be talking about it all evening long. Though, you know, again, with Dana White's Contender Series, they don't necessarily have a main event, but they kind of do. You know what I mean? They show packages on everybody, but I think they'll all be talking about it. And listen, I can tell you behind the scenes, I mean, people are aware. It's funny. I actually just pulled up the odds because I wanted to see what
-110.
It's basically a pick 'em. I mean, it's basically a pick 'em. Depending on where you look, I'm like in you know, a couple different houses, and Raheam is a slight favorite in some, but it's basically a pick 'em everywhere you go. And I agree with that. I mean, these 2 dudes are talented. Danny Barlow, long, rangy, power. I mean, if he lands that early shot,
is different.
Oh, it's on a different level, man. He can put you out, so you got to be careful. I mean, the left-handed guy for a reason. Be careful. But Raheam, gritty, you know, probably maybe the more well-rounded fighter out of the 2, battle-tested. you know, he's been in some wars where maybe Danny Barlow has been dominating, hasn't been tested yet. So, gosh, I'm excited for it.
Can it be Tuesday night yet?
I know. I will be in the building, so I'm excited for it. I'm a little bit frustrated, but I'm also excited for both these guys. So, a great Dana White's Contender Series on Tuesday night.
Yep. Shame one of them actually has to lose because they're both really good guys, man. They're both just awesome guys. So, can I make a major announcement yet?
Make it. Let's go.
All right. My major announcement. You kind of jumped the shark on me in the opening segment. But as of last Tuesday, your boy, not your boy Eric Anders, your boy Eric McMahon is official. I am officially licensed as a referee in the state of Nevada. I have got my first assignment.
Oh, okay. I thought we were just stopping there. I knew the license was done. We got a first assignment?
First assignment.
What is it?
Dana White Contender Series. Tuesday, October 3rd. Myself and Jason Herzog are the two refs in the cage that night.
Man, I love it. Let's cheers. Yay. Congratulations. Play the sound effects. Woo. We don't have sound effects. But yes, you deserve that, man. That's awesome. I'm glad to see that. I know you've been coming out here and shadowing and working behind the scenes and getting ready. And obviously, I've seen your work at CFFC and the commitment you have there, man. So that is awesome, man. Congratulations for that. I look forward to seeing you there.
Man, I appreciate it. It was a long road. And, man, now just kind of go in there and do what I do, but on a higher level.
I love it, man. I love it.
Hopefully, maybe keep working up that chain. You see me on pay-per-view soon. I don't know. All I know is I'm a fan first. I love the sport, and man, I'm here to help make it better if I can.
And that's the way it should be, man. I really do believe that. I think, I'm a fan first. You know what I mean? Like, I love the sport, and I think when people that are actually passionate about it want to help continue to make it better and take a part in it. And listen, man, it's not an easy journey, the one you've taken, but others can take it. You know what I mean? If you feel that you want to go be a judge, a referee, whatever, to be a part of the sport, you can. You absolutely can. You can go to your local commission wherever you are, and you can talk to them about the education process, the licensure process, and you'll start out doing some amateur fights and some whatever, but you can do that. You can take part in it. I've seen some guys do it over the years, so it is possible. If it's something you want to do, you can do it, and I highly recommend you do, because I think people that are really passionate about the sport and stay involved in it are only going to serve to make it better over the years.
Yep, I agree. We're going to end it on that. Stay tuned. We'll talk about this next Monday. I'm actually going to be traveling next Monday, but I think we'll have time to fit in a little podcast before I get on my airplane and fly out to Sin City.
If I need to get up early, I'll get up early, man. We'll make it happen out here in Las Vegas. We got a lot of time. Look, there's PFL Europe this weekend. There's one championship this weekend that's got a good card. They're back on Amazon. Speaking of CFSC family, Danielle Kelly's on there, grappling for a world title. You got John Lineker on there, Stamp Fairtex, and Raheam. So there'll be, even though there's no UFC this weekend, we still got some MMA to talk about. So if I need to wake up early out here in Las Vegas to get a podcast done with you before you fly here, we'll make it happen.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first. Great card this past week in the Apex. A lot of damage taken. Chris Leben was in attendance, former fighter, becoming judge. Former fighter. Not that good of a former fighter, but becomes a referee. We both got licensed in the state of Nevada, man. Stay tuned. Hopefully a lot more cooler stuff coming. But for John Morgan, I'm Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.